my wife said. Our neighbor was just lonely. Then I saw his name in our wedding photos. I found the photo album in a box labeled Kitchen Miscellaneous while cleaning out our garage on a Thursday afternoon. My wife Rachel was at her book club, and I'd promised to finally tackle the storage unit's worth of wedding memorabilia we'd been ignoring for 3 years. The album wasn't one I recognized. Burgundy leather, edges worn soft with handling. Inside the front cover, someone had written, "For keeps," in handwriting that wasn't Rachel's. The first dozen pages were normal enough. Our ceremony at the Botanical Gardens, Rachel in her ivory dress with the lace sleeves she'd spent 8 months choosing, me in the navy suit my brother had talked me out of renting, our family smiling in those stiff-posed shots everyone hates but keeps anyway. Then I turned to page 15 and felt my stomach drop through the floor. There, standing in the back row of our reception hall photo, partially obscured by Rachel's aunt, was our neighbor, Daniel Whitmore. The quiet guy from 3 doors down who Rachel had been bringing casseroles to for the past 6 months because he was going through a rough divorce and just needed someone to talk to. Except in this photo, taken 3 years ago, he wasn't partially hidden. He was clear as day, wearing a gray suit I'd never seen him in, holding a champagne flute, and staring directly at my wife with an expression that made my hands start shaking. I'd met Daniel 4 times total. Once when he'd moved in 18 months ago, hauling boxes from a Toyota truck with Tennessee plates. Twice when Rachel had insisted I come with her to drop off dinner. Those awkward doorstep conversations where he'd thanked us profusely while barely making eye contact with me. And once 2 weeks ago when I'd seen him in our driveway at 11 o'clock at night, helping Rachel carry in groceries she'd apparently texted him about when her car trunk wouldn't close. He was just driving by, she'd explained, which I'd thought was odd but not impossible. Our street was a throughway to the main road. People drove by. But now, staring at this photo, I realized Daniel Whitmore hadn't just driven by anything. He'd been at our wedding. A wedding that happened 15 months before he supposedly moved to our neighborhood. A wedding where I didn't remember inviting anyone named Daniel. I flipped through the rest of the album with hands that wouldn't steady. Page 18. Daniel in the background of a dance floor shot, watching Rachel twirl with her father. Page 22. Daniel at the buffet table, plate empty, eyes tracking something off camera. Page 28. Daniel outside during the sparkler exit, standing apart from the crowd, photographed in profile as the professional photographer must have accidentally caught him while focusing on the vintage car we'd rented. In every single photo, he wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at Rachel. And in every single photo, he had that same expression. Not quite longing, not quite possessive, but something in between that made my throat close up. I pulled out my phone and called Rachel. It went to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I sent a text. Found an old wedding album in the garage. We need to talk when you get home. 3 dots appeared immediately, which meant she was looking at her phone, which meant she'd deliberately ignored my calls. The dots disappeared, reappeared, disappeared again. Finally, a message came through. At Costco with Diane after book club. Home around 6. Everything okay? I stared at that message for a full minute. Everything okay? Such a casual question for someone who'd just been caught in what I was increasingly certain was a lie. Or maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. Maybe Daniel was a distant cousin I'd forgotten about. Maybe Rachel had mentioned him and I'd been too stressed with work to remember. Maybe I was the asshole for immediately jumping to worst-case scenarios. I went back inside and opened my laptop. Facebook first. Daniel Whitmore had a private profile with no mutual friends and a profile picture of a mountain landscape. LinkedIn showed he worked in consulting with a vague description that could have meant anything. I tried searching our wedding hashtag on Instagram. Rachel had insisted we have one, and scrolled through 300 photos from guests. No Daniel. I checked the vendor proofs the photographer had sent us on a USB drive I'd kept in my desk drawer. 1,200 photos total. I found him in 38 of them. 38. Always in the background. Always watching. Never close enough to be obviously part of the event, but never far enough away to seem like a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong venue. My phone buzzed. Text from my best friend Liam. You coming to poker tonight? I'd completely forgotten. Every other Thursday for 5 years, rain or shine, our group of 6 met at rotating houses. Tonight was supposed to be at my place. I texted back, "Can we move it to your place?" Something came up. He responded immediately. "Everything cool?" I typed out, "Not sure," then deleted it and sent, "Yeah, just Rachel's got a thing," instead. Lying to Liam felt wrong, but I didn't even know what the truth was yet. How do you tell your best friend you think your wife has been lying about knowing your neighbor when you don't have any actual proof beyond some old photos and a gut feeling that had turned your entire Thursday into a nightmare? Rachel got home at 6:15, arms full of Costco bags, talking about how Diane had convinced her to buy a 20-pound bag of organic quinoa we'd never finish. I let her put the groceries away. I let her change into sweatpants and pour herself a glass of wine. I let her settle onto the couch with her phone, scrolling through whatever app she defaulted to when she wanted to decompress. Then I brought out the album. "Found this in the garage," I said, keeping my voice level. "Weird thing is, I don't remember this album from our wedding." Rachel glanced up. glanced at the burgundy leather, and something flickered across her face. Not quite panic, not quite recognition, something in between. "Oh," she said. "That's the backup photographer's album. Remember? Aunt Linda hired that photography student as insurance? We got those prints months later, and I guess I just stuck them in a box." "Right," I said. I opened to page 15 and set the album on the coffee table between us. "So why is Daniel Whitmore in our backup wedding photos?" Rachel's wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. She set it down carefully, the way you set down something fragile when you're trying not to show your hands are shaking. "What?" she said. "Daniel? That's not... Let me see." She picked up the album and stared at the photo for 10 long seconds. "Oh my God," she said finally. "That does look like him. How weird. How weird. Not, that can't be him, or you're seeing things, or any of the responses I'd been hoping for. How weird. As if finding your neighbor, who supposedly moved in 18 months ago, in your 3-year-old wedding photos was just a curious coincidence." "Rachel," I said. "That's him. Same face, same build, same..." "Lots of people look similar," she interrupted, "and you can barely see his face in this shot." I flipped to page 18, then 22, then 28. With each page, Rachel's face got paler. Finally, she closed the album and pushed it away. "Okay," she said. "This is going to sound insane, but Daniel and I used to work together. Years ago. Before I met you. He must have heard through the grapevine that I was getting married and showed up uninvited. I didn't even know he was there until I saw these photos months later, and by then, it seemed like ancient history, so I never mentioned it." The lie was so smooth it almost worked. Almost. "What company?" I asked. "When did you work with him?" Rachel stood up and walked to the kitchen, buying time. "It was a temp agency thing, like 6 years ago. I barely remember the details. Why does it matter?" "It matters," I said, following her, "because our neighbor, who you've been taking food to for 6 months, who you text at 11 at night about grocery trunk problems, who you said was just some lonely divorced guy going through a hard time, was at our wedding. And you never thought to mention it?" "I told you, I didn't know he was there," Rachel said, her voice rising. "And even if I had, so what? We worked together for like 3 months half a decade ago. Am I supposed to give you a full background check on everyone from my past? When they show up at our wedding uninvited? Yeah, actually." Rachel's jaw tightened. "You're being paranoid," she said. "Daniel is a nice guy going through a divorce who happens to live on our street. I'm being a good neighbor. That's it." "Then why didn't you tell me you knew him before?" I pressed. "When he moved in, why didn't you say, 'Oh, hey, I used to work with that guy'?" Rachel grabbed her wine glass from where she'd left it and took a long drink. "Because I didn't recognize him at first," she said. "People change. It's been years. And once I realized it might be the same Daniel from the temp agency, it felt awkward to bring up because I knew you'd make it into this whole thing. Which you're doing. Right now." I wanted to believe her. I wanted that explanation to fill in the gaps and make everything make sense. But it didn't. Because there were 38 photos. Because in every single one, he was looking at her with that expression. Because she'd been bringing him food and texting him, and I'd never once heard her mention they had any prior connection. "I'm going to Liam's," I said. "Poker night." "I thought that was here," Rachel said. "Change of plans," I told her, and walked out before she could argue. I didn't go to Liam's. I drove to the neighborhood pool parking lot 3 blocks away and sat in my Subaru with the engine running, trying to think. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "I'm sorry. I should have told you we worked together. I was embarrassed that I didn't recognize him right away. Can we talk when you get home?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened our cell phone account online. We had a family plan, and pulled up the last 3 months of call logs. Rachel's number. Pages and pages of texts and calls. I filtered by Daniel's number, which I'd saved in my phone months ago when Rachel had asked me to add him to our neighborhood watch group chat. 63 text messages in 3 months. In 22 phone calls, ranging from 2 minutes to 39 minutes. The longest call had happened on a Monday afternoon 2 weeks ago, when I'd been in back-to-back meetings, and Rachel had texted me she was running errands. The call had lasted 39 minutes and 8 seconds. I checked my own messages with Rachel from that day. Nothing indicating she'd been on a call. Nothing unusual at all. Just a text at noon saying, "Grabbing lunch with Mom," and another at 5 saying, "Home soon, need anything?" I scrolled back further. December 3rd, a Thursday. Rachel had told me she was going to a holiday party for her remote work team. She'd left at 7 in fancy clothes and gotten home at midnight. Her call log showed a 3-minute call to Daniel at 8:15 and a 7-minute call at 11:30. I checked my calendar. December 3rd was the same day Daniel had texted our neighborhood group chat, asking if anyone knew a good roofer because he'd found a leak. Rachel had responded offering to swing by with some buckets and tarp, since she had extras from our own roof situation last summer. I'd been traveling for work. I hadn't thought anything of it. My hands were shaking again. I put the phone down and gripped the steering wheel, staring at the empty pool through the windshield. The rational part of my brain was screaming that I was jumping to conclusions, that phone calls between neighbors weren't evidence of anything sinister, that I was letting paranoia destroy my marriage. But the irrational part, the part that had seen 38 wedding photos, kept showing me that expression on Daniel's face, kept replaying Rachel's too smooth lie about the temp agency, kept calculating how many times she'd had opportunities to be alone with him while I'd been at work, at the gym, traveling, trusting that my wife was exactly where she said she'd be. I called Liam. "Hey," he said. "You on your way?" "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Does Rachel seem different to you lately?" Silence. Then, "Different how?" "I don't know. Distracted? Secretive?" More silence. "Man, what's going on?" I told him everything. The album, the photos, the phone records, Rachel's explanation. He listened without interrupting, which was how I knew he was taking it seriously. When I finished, he let out a long breath. "Okay," he said. "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to come over here. You're going to tell the guys you're not feeling great and leave early. Then tomorrow morning, you're going to take a sick day and follow up on this. Check her story about the temp agency. Look up Daniel's employment history. See if it matches. Don't confront her again until you have actual facts." "I feel insane," I said. "Yeah," Liam agreed. "But you also might be right. And you need to know which one it is before you blow up your marriage or let something terrible slide." He paused. "For what it's worth, I've known Rachel 6 years and I've never seen her be sketchy. But I've also never seen you like this. So something's off. Find out what." I drove to Liam's house, played 2 hands of poker while pretending my marriage wasn't potentially imploding, then went home at 9:30 claiming a migraine. Rachel was in bed reading, or pretending to read. "Feeling better?" she asked when I came in. "Yeah," I lied. I went through my nighttime routine on autopilot, brushed my teeth, changed into sleep clothes, and got into bed beside the woman I'd married 3 years ago and suddenly wasn't sure I knew it all. I barely slept. Every time I started to drift off, I'd see those wedding photos, and my brain would spin up new nightmare scenarios. At 4 in the morning, I got up and went to my office, opened my laptop, started searching. Daniel Whitmore, plus Tennessee, plus employment, brought up a LinkedIn profile matching our neighbor's face. According to the profile, he'd worked at Meridian Consulting Group in Nashville from 2019 to 2023. Before that, Patterson and Lloyd Accounting from 2016 to 2019. Before that, graduate school at Vanderbilt. Nothing about temp agencies. Nothing in our city. Nothing that overlapped with Rachel's employment history, which I knew by heart because we'd talked about it during our early dating conversations. She'd worked remotely for a healthcare software company since 2018. Before that, she'd done administrative work for a property management firm. Before that, retail while finishing her degree. I checked the property management firm's website. Still in business, still local. I wrote down the phone number. Then I searched for Rachel's employment history on LinkedIn. Her profile confirmed what I already knew, but I scrolled through her connections anyway. 312 people. I searched for Daniel. No Daniel Whitmore. I searched for Whitmore. Nothing. I checked her Facebook friends. Same thing. I went back to my phone and pulled up our wedding vendor contracts. The photographer, Julia Santos, had charged us $4,800 and promised 8 weeks for delivery of digital files, 12 weeks for the album. She delivered on time. I'd never heard of a backup photographer. Rachel's Aunt Linda, who supposedly hired one, had passed away 16 months ago. Convenient. At 6 in the morning, I texted my boss that I was taking a sick day. At 7, I heard Rachel get up and start her morning routine. I stayed in my office. She knocked once. "You okay?" She called through the door. "Migraine's back," I said. "Going to sleep it off." "Do you need anything?" "No." I listened to her move through the house. Coffee maker gurgling, shower running, hairdryer humming. At 8:15, her car pulled out of the driveway. I gave it 5 minutes, then got dressed and drove to the property management company where Rachel had supposedly worked before I met her. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, smiled when I came in. "Help you?" "I'm trying to verify employment for someone," I said, which was technically true. "Rachel Holloway. She would have worked here around 2016, 2017. The receptionist typed something on her computer, frowned, typed more. "I'm not showing anyone by that name in our system," she said. "Could it have been under a different name? Maiden name, maybe?" "Collins," I said, giving Rachel's maiden name. More typing, more frowning. "No," she said. "No Rachel Collins either. Are you sure she worked here?" "That's what I'm trying to verify," I said. "Could she have been a temp? Someone contracted through an agency?" The receptionist shook her head. "We don't use temp agencies. All our administrative staff are direct hires. Has been that way since I started in 2008. My stomach dropped. "Is there anyone else I could check with? A manager who might remember her?" The receptionist looked at me with more sympathy now. "Han," she said gently. "If she worked here, she'd be in the system. We don't delete employee records. They're all digital going back to 2003. If you want, I can have our HR director double-check, but I'm pretty confident we've never employed anyone named Rachel Collins or Rachel Holloway." I thanked her and walked back to my car, hands numb. Rachel had lied about where she worked before we met. which meant either she'd lied about her entire employment history or she'd lied specifically about the property management company. And the only reason to lie about that one job would be if that's where she'd actually met Daniel. Except his LinkedIn said he'd been in Tennessee during that time, unless he'd lied on LinkedIn, unless they'd both been lying about everything. I sat in the parking lot and called the healthcare software company where Rachel currently worked, asked to speak to HR, got transferred 3 times before reaching someone who could help. "I'm calling to verify employment for Rachel Holloway," I said, using the same script. "She says she's been with your company since 2018. "I can't give out detailed information," the HR representative said, "but I can confirm employment dates. Hold, please." Hold music. 3 minutes. 4. Finally, "Yes, we have a Rachel Holloway who started with us in January 2018 and is currently employed. Is there anything else?" "No," I said. "Thank you." At least that part was true. I drove home, parked in the driveway, sat there staring at Daniel Whitmore's house 3 doors down, navy blue shutters, white siding, a rental, based on the property records I'd looked up months ago when we'd been discussing neighborhood property values. Daniel rented from an LLC based in Nashville. I got out of my car and walked to his front door before I could talk myself out of it. Rang the doorbell. Waited. Footsteps inside. The door opened. Daniel stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, coffee mug in hand, looking confused. "Hey," he said. "Everything okay?" "I found some old wedding photos," I said. "And you're in them." The confusion on Daniel's face morphed into something else. Recognition. Resignation. "Ah," he said quietly. He stepped back from the door. "You should probably come in." The inside of Daniel's rental was exactly what I'd expected from a divorced guy living alone. Minimal furniture, boxes still unpacked in corners, bare walls except for a flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace. He gestured to a worn couch, and I sat. He sat in a chair across from me, setting his coffee on a side table. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel said, "How much did she tell you?" "That you worked together at a temp agency years ago," I said, "and that you showed up at our wedding uninvited." Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's the story she went with?" He leaned back and rubbed his face. Jesus. "So what's the real story?" I asked. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Daniel looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding something. Finally, he said, "Rachel and I dated for 2 years, 2017 to 2019. We met in Nashville when I was working at Patterson and Lloyd, and she was doing freelance web design. We lived together for most of that time." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Freelance web design?" I said. "Rachel told me she's never done web design." "She was good at it," Daniel said. "That's how she got the remote healthcare software job. She used her portfolio from freelance work." He stood up and walked to a bookshelf in the corner, pulled down a photo album, handed it to me. I opened it with hands that had started shaking again. Page 1, Rachel and Daniel at a restaurant, her head on his shoulder. Page 2, Rachel and Daniel hiking, matching backpacks. Page 3, Rachel and Daniel in front of a Christmas tree, holding champagne glasses. She looked younger, happier, completely in love with the man next to her, the man who was now sitting across from me in a rental house on my street. "We broke up in March 2019, Daniel said. "She left Nashville, said she needed a fresh start. I was devastated, spent 6 months trying to get her back. Finally accepted it was over and tried to move on. Met my ex-wife in 2020, married her in 2021, divorced by 2023. Messy, expensive, lots of therapy." "And the wedding?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel closed his eyes. "She invited me. Called me 2 weeks before, said she was getting married but wanted me there because I'd been an important part of her life. Said it would mean a lot. I was an idiot and said yes. Drove 11 hours from Nashville, sat in the back, left before the reception ended. I told myself it was closure." He opened his eyes. "It wasn't closure." "Then why are you here?" I asked. "Why move to our street?" "I didn't know it was your street," Daniel said. "Not at first. I got divorced, needed out of Nashville, took a consulting contract in this city, found a rental listing online for a place within my budget, showed up to sign the lease and saw her pulling into her driveway 3 houses down. I should have left. I should have broken the lease and found somewhere else. But I didn't. Because I'm pathetic, and I convinced myself that maybe the universe was giving us a second chance." The room felt like it was tilting. "Has she been having an affair with you?" I asked bluntly. Daniel shook his head. "No, I swear. Nothing physical. But emotional? Yeah, probably. We've been talking. A lot. She brings me food, we have coffee, she calls me when she's upset about something. She tells me about you, your job, your hobbies, your friends. She compares us sometimes. Not explicitly, but it's there. The subtext." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Look, I know how this sounds. I'm the villain in this scenario, the ex who won't let go. But she called me. After I moved in and we ran into each other, she's the one who reached out first. She's the one who showed up at my door with a casserole and said we should catch up. I didn't say no. I stood up. Couldn't sit anymore. Couldn't breathe in this house. Does she know you still have feelings for her? I asked. Honestly, Daniel said, I think she's counting on it. I left without another word. Drove home. Rachel's car was still gone. She'd be at work until 5. I went to our bedroom and pulled out her laptop from her nightside table. She didn't password protect it because we'd always been the kind of couple who trusted each other with devices. What a joke that seemed now. I opened her messages app, scrolled to Daniel's contact, hundreds of messages going back months. I started reading. I miss when life was simple, Rachel had written in November. Daniel, me too. Rachel, do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd stayed? Daniel, every day. December 2nd, the day before the work party I now doubted existed. Rachel, can I come over tonight? I need to talk to someone who gets me. Daniel, always. December 3rd, 8:13 p.m. Rachel, thank you for tonight. I needed that. Daniel, anytime. January 8th. Rachel, I feel like I married the wrong person. My hands froze on the trackpad. I read the message again. Checked the date. January 8th, last week, when I'd been home. When I'd made her breakfast and we'd watched a movie and I'd thought we were fine. I kept reading. Daniel hadn't responded to that message for 3 hours. When he did, all he wrote was, then what are you going to do about it? Rachel, I don't know. That's what terrifies me. I closed the laptop, sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where I'd slept next to her every night for 3 years, thinking I knew her, thinking we were building a life together. My phone buzzed. Text from Rachel. Feeling better? Want me to grab takeout on the way home? I looked at that text for 30 seconds. Then I typed, we need to talk. Come home now. 3 dots immediately. Then, can't leave work until 5. What's wrong? I sent her a screenshot of the message where she'd told Daniel she married the wrong person. Watched the 3 dots appear and disappear 6 times. Finally, I can explain. I didn't respond. I called my brother instead. I need a lawyer, I said when he picked up. A divorce lawyer. Can you recommend someone? My brother Andrew had been through a messy divorce 4 years ago and had emerged with joint custody of his kids and most of his assets intact, thanks to what he called the best shark in the state. Her name was Margaret Chen, and she'd supposedly torn his ex-wife's attorney apart with procedural precision and case law. Why? Andrew asked, his voice sharp with concern. I gave him the abbreviated version. The photos, the lies, the messages, the ex-boyfriend 3 doors down. Andrew swore viciously. I'm calling Margaret right now, he said. Don't sign anything, don't move any money, don't make any promises, and get those messages backed up somewhere Rachel can't delete them. She's coming home at 5, I said. Do I let her? No, Andrew said firmly. You tell her to stay somewhere else tonight while you figure out next steps. Don't let her turn this into a conversation where she manipulates you into forgiving her before you've had time to process. I'd never heard Andrew sound this protective of me. It helped, grounded me. Okay, I said. Okay. He paused. You doing all right? Stupid question, but I don't know, I said honestly. I feel like my entire life just got revealed as a lie. Not your entire life, Andrew said. Just the parts she lied about. But yeah, this is going to hurt like hell for a while. I'm coming over. You don't have to. I'm coming over, he repeated. You shouldn't be alone right now. Also, I don't trust you not to do something stupid like let her talk you into couples therapy when what you need is a forensic accountant and a private investigator. Private investigator? I said. To investigate what? Whether this is the first time she's done this, Andrew said. And to find out what else she's lying about. Margaret will have recommendations. I'll be there in 20. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone, my quiet house suddenly feeling enormous and empty. Then I methodically went through every room, looking for other things I might have missed. In Rachel's closet, pushed to the back, I found a box of cards and letters. I opened them. Birthday cards from Daniel dating back to 2018. To my best friend, one said, distance doesn't change how I feel. A Valentine from 2020, a year after they'd supposedly broken up, and 2 years into my relationship with Rachel. Still thinking of you. Always will. I photographed every single one. In her desk drawer, I found a journal. I knew I was violating her privacy by opening it, but I didn't care anymore. The last entry was dated January 10th, 2 days ago. I don't know how much longer I can pretend, it read. Being with Daniel again has reminded me of who I used to be. Spontaneous, creative, free. With my husband, I'm just going through the motions. He's a good man. He deserves better than someone who's constantly wondering if she made a mistake. But leaving would mean admitting I failed. Admitting I built my entire life on a foundation of running away from my feelings. I don't know what to do. I took a photo of that page, too. Added it to a folder on my phone labeled Evidence. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped, replaced by a cold, clear fury that felt almost surgical. Rachel had been lying to me for our entire relationship. She'd never worked at that property management company. She'd been in Nashville with Daniel. She'd never left him out of ambition or growth. She'd run away and reinvented herself. And when he showed up 3 houses down, she'd welcomed him back into her life like I was just a placeholder. A good man who deserved better. She'd written that. Actually written it. As if she was doing me a favor by staying in a marriage she'd already emotionally left. Andrew arrived at 3:30 with 2 bags of groceries and a determined expression. "Figured you haven't eaten," he said, pushing past me into the kitchen. He started making sandwiches without asking permission, moving through my kitchen like he owned it. "Margaret can see you tomorrow at 9, he said while slicing tomatoes. "She's already drafting a separation agreement based on what I told her. Depending on what you want, we can file for fault-based divorce, adultery, even if it's just emotional, or no fault. Fault gives you leverage in asset division." "We don't have many assets," I said. "House is in both names. We have about 30,000 in savings, 2 car payments." "Doesn't matter," Andrew said. "It's the principle. Also, Margaret wants to know if there's any evidence Rachel's been financially entangled with Daniel. Gifts, loans, anything." I hadn't thought of that. I pulled up our joint bank account on my phone, scanned through 3 months of transactions. Most were routine: groceries, utilities, gas, insurance. But there were 5 Venmo payments to Daniel, $50 each, all marked neighborly appreciation. $250 total. Not huge, but not nothing. "She's been Venmoing him money," I said. Andrew looked over my shoulder at the screen. "Screenshot that. Also check if she's opened any accounts you don't know about." I called our bank, sat on hold for 8 minutes while Andrew made coffee and paced my kitchen like a caged animal. Finally, a representative came on. "I need to verify if my wife has any individual accounts with your bank," I said. "I only have access to our joint account, and I'm concerned about financial discrepancy." The representative took my information, put me on hold again. 3 minutes. 5. "Sir, I'm showing one savings account under just your wife's name, opened in September of last year. I can't give you balance information without her authorization, but I can confirm it exists." September, 4 months after Daniel had moved in. "Thank you," I said, and hung up. "She opened a secret savings account," I told Andrew. His jaw tightened. "That's divorce prep," he said. "That's her setting up an escape fund, which means she's been planning this longer than you think." The doorbell rang at 4:15. We both froze. "If that's Rachel, I'm answering," Andrew said. It wasn't Rachel. It was Daniel. He stood on my porch looking pale and miserable. "I know you probably don't want to see me," he said, "but I thought you should have this." He held out a USB drive. "What is it?" I asked. "Security camera footage," Daniel said. "My landlord installed cameras when the property was broken into last year. They cover the front of my house and part of the street. There are recordings of Rachel coming over. Dates, times, everything. I pulled the last 6 months. I don't know what I thought, but you deserve to know the full truth." I took the USB drive, didn't thank him. Just stood there while Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of this. I shouldn't have moved here. I shouldn't have encouraged her. I was selfish and I hurt people and You need to leave my property," Andrew said from behind me, his voice ice. "Now." Daniel nodded, turned, walked back to his house. I closed the door and looked at the USB drive in my hand. "Want me to check it?" Andrew asked. "Or do you want to wait for the lawyer?" "Check it," I said. I couldn't take any more uncertainty. Andrew pulled out his laptop and we plugged in the drive. 26 video files, organized by date. We started with the oldest. September 19th at 8:13 p.m. Rachel's car pulling into Daniel's driveway. Rachel getting out wearing the dress she'd told me she'd worn to a work dinner. Her knocking on Daniel's door, him answering, her going inside. The timestamp showed her leaving at 11:42, 3.5 hours. October 8th at 2:17 p.m., Rachel's car again. This time she brought bags, looked like groceries or containers, stayed until 6:09. November 3rd at 7:55 p.m., Rachel arriving in yoga clothes, leaving at midnight 30. December 3rd at 8:20 p.m., the night of the supposed work holiday party. Rachel in the fancy black dress I'd complimented her on, staying until 11:53. Every visit was hours long. Every visit was while I'd been told she was somewhere else. The final video was dated January 9th, 4 days ago. Rachel had told me she was going to her mom's for dinner. The timestamp showed her arriving at Daniel's at 6:35 p.m. At 7:12, the camera caught them in his doorway. Daniel's hands on Rachel's waist, Rachel's arms around his neck. Kissing. Not a peck. Not a friendly goodbye kiss. A long, desperate, passionate kiss that left zero room for misinterpretation. They stood there like that for 38 seconds before Rachel pulled away and hurried to her car. I watched my wife kiss another man in high-definition video and felt something inside me shut down. Not anger anymore. Just cold, empty certainty. Andrew's hand was on my shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm so sorry." I looked at the timestamp. January 9th. 3 days ago, Rachel had texted me at 8:30 that night saying dinner with her mom had run late, but she'd be home soon. I'd texted back, "No rush, love you," and meant it. She'd responded with a heart emoji, and she'd been coming from Daniel's house, coming from kissing him, coming from whatever else they'd done in the hour before that camera caught them. She doesn't get to come back here, I said. My voice sounded strange, flat. Not tonight, not ever. Andrew nodded. I'll call Margaret. We'll file a restraining order if we have to. Right now, you need to change the locks. We went to Home Depot, bought new deadbolts and handle sets, installed them while it was still light out. By the time Rachel's car pulled into the driveway at 5:43, our house had locks she couldn't open. I watched from the window as she tried her key, frowned, tried again, then pulled out her phone. My phone buzzed. I didn't answer. She knocked. Hello? Why don't my keys work? She knocked harder. This isn't funny. Let me in. Andrew opened the door, but blocked the entrance with his body. You're not coming in tonight, he said. Your husband wants you to stay somewhere else while he processes everything he found today. Rachel's eyes widened. She tried to see past Andrew to where I stood in the hallway. What did you find? What are you talking about? I know about Daniel, I said. My voice carried across the distance. All of it. Nashville. The lies about your job history, the wedding, the past 6 months, the kissing, everything. Rachel's face crumpled. Please, she said. Please let me explain. It's not what it looks like. Daniel and I are just friends. That kiss was... Don't, I interrupted. Don't insult me with more lies. I've seen the messages. I read your journal. I know you told him you married the wrong person. I know you've been planning to leave. I know everything. She started crying. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I love you. I love you, and I made a horrible mistake, and we can fix this. Please. We can go to therapy. We can work it out. Just please don't do this. You already did this, I said. I'm just reacting to it. Andrew handed her a manila envelope. Separation papers? He said. You can stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow you can come back between 10 and noon to pack essential items. My brother will be here, but he won't engage with you. After that, communicate through lawyers only. Rachel clutched the envelope, crying harder. Where am I supposed to go? Daniel's house is 3 doors down, Andrew said flatly. I'm sure he'll take you in. He closed the door, locked it. Rachel stood on the porch for another 5 minutes, crying and begging. Then her phone rang, probably Daniela, and she stumbled to her car and drove away. I stood in my living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt nothing. Andrew was already on his phone, texting someone. Margaret's sending over documentation you'll need to gather, he said. Bank statements, tax returns, deed to the house, anything with both your names. We're meeting her at 9 tomorrow. Okay, I said. You should eat something, Andrew said. The sandwich I made is still on the counter. Not hungry. Eat anyway. You're going to need your strength for what comes next. What came next was a blur. Margaret Chen was exactly as Andrew had described, sharp, efficient, and ruthlessly competent. She listened to everything, examined every piece of evidence I'd collected, and laid out my options with clinical precision. With the evidence you have, especially the video footage and her own written admission of emotional infidelity, we can absolutely file a fault-based divorce on grounds of adultery, she said. Tennessee law is complicated, but since the affair started in Nashville and continued here, we have leverage. More importantly, this isn't a he-said-she-said situation. You have documentation. That makes this open and shut. How long will it take? I asked. Margaret consulted her notes. Contested, maybe 8 to 12 months if she fights. But given the evidence, I suspect she won't fight. She'll want this resolved quietly before her employer finds out she's been lying about business trips to conduct an affair. My guess? We'll have a settlement in 3 to 4 months. What about the house? Jointly owned, Margaret said. So you'll either buy her out, she'll buy you out, or you'll sell and split proceeds. Given that you've been paying the majority of the mortgage based on the bank statements you showed me, you have a strong case for primary ownership. We'll push for that. She tapped her pen against her legal pad. I'm going to recommend you hire a private investigator to do a comprehensive background check on both Rachel and Daniel. I want to know if there's any financial entanglement we haven't uncovered, any other properties, any other lies. The more ammunition we have, the better your settlement will be. I hired the investigator that afternoon. His name was James Kowalski, former police detective, now running his own firm. He had reviews that called him thorough and discreet and worth every penny. He charged $200 an hour. I didn't care. I'll start with public records, he said. Property ownership, vehicle registration, court documents, business filings. Then I'll move to social media archaeology and witness interviews if needed. Give me 3 days. 3 days. I took the rest of the week off work, telling my boss it was a family emergency, which was technically true. I stayed in my house. Andrew stayed with me the first 2 nights, sleeping on the couch, making sure I ate, running interference when Rachel tried to call 63 times in 24 hours. I didn't answer. I didn't read her texts. I blocked her on everything except email, which Margaret said I needed to keep open for legal communication. The only message that got through was from Rachel's lawyer. She'd hired someone within 18 hours of receiving the separation papers. His name was Peter something, and his email was professional and cold, requesting a meeting to discuss amicable dissolution of marriage. Margaret responded that we'd discuss terms after discovery was complete. No meetings until we had all the facts. The investigator called me on day 3. "Got something interesting," James said. "Can you come to my office?" I drove to his office in downtown, a modest suite on the 4th floor of a building that had seen better decades. James was waiting with a folder thick enough to require rubber bands. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. I sat. He opened the folder. Rachel Collins, maiden name, born 1991 in Kentucky, moved to Nashville in 2015 for school, dropped out after 2 years to pursue web design as you were told. That part checks out. What doesn't check out is the employment history she gave you. She never worked at that property management company. She never worked in healthcare before 2018. What she did do from 2016 to 2019 was freelance web design while living with Daniel Whitmore at an apartment on East Oak Street in Nashville. He showed me a copy of a lease agreement with both their names. They renewed this lease twice, February 2017 and February 2018. They didn't break the lease until March 2019, which matches Daniel's timeline. So she was telling the truth about that, I said. Partially, James agreed. Here's where it gets interesting. In April 2019, 1 month after leaving Nashville, Rachel applied for a remote position at her current employer using a reference from someone named Vincent Caldwell, listed as her supervisor at the property management company that says they never employed her. He pulled out another document. I called Vincent Caldwell. He's real, retired now. And he admitted that Rachel paid him $500 to lie on a reference check. He said she told him she'd had a bad breakup and needed to reinvent herself for a fresh start. He felt sorry for her, so he did it. Illegal? Absolutely. Provable? Unfortunately, probably not without his cooperation, which he's not willing to give. My head was spinning. She committed fraud to get her job? Technically, yes, James said. But companies rarely pursue charges for fake references unless there's significant financial loss. What's more relevant to your case is the pattern of deception. She lied to her employer. She lied to you. She's been lying for years. He flipped to another section. Now, Daniel Whitmore. Clean record, no criminal history, no significant debts. He really did get divorced in 2023. I found the court records. His ex-wife cited irreconcilable differences, and there's no mention of infidelity, though that doesn't mean it didn't happen. What's interesting is that Daniel moved to this city in August of last year, but he'd been looking at rental properties here since June, 2 months before Rachel knew he was coming, which suggests he planned this. He didn't accidentally end up on your street. Jesus, I breathed. James nodded grimly. I also pulled credit reports for both of them, which I can do legally through my investigative license. Daniel has a credit card in his name only, opened in September, with about $8,000 in charges. Most of it is restaurants and hotels, local ones. I cross-referenced dates with Rachel's calendar, which her employer was willing to share after I explained there was a potential fraud investigation, and I found at least 6 instances where she called in sick or took personal days that align with hotel charges on Daniel's card. He handed me a spreadsheet. They've been staying at hotels together. The Marriott downtown, the boutique place on River Street, the extended stay near the airport, daytime check-ins, evening checkouts, all while you were at work. I stared at the spreadsheet. 6 hotels, 6 lies, 6 days where she'd kissed me goodbye in the morning and spent the afternoon in a hotel room with her ex-boyfriend. Is that enough? I asked. For the divorce? More than enough, James said. This is a slam dunk. If Rachel's lawyer has any sense, he'll advise her to settle quickly and quietly rather than let this go to court where it becomes public record. I took the folder, paid James his fee, $6,300, which he'd discounted because he felt bad for me, drove home, sat at my kitchen table and read through every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence that my marriage had been a lie from the start. My phone rang. Margaret Chen. Rachel's lawyer called, she said. She wants to settle. She's offering you the house in exchange for 50% of your retirement accounts and half the savings. She'll waive alimony if you waive it too. Clean break. No, I said. She opened a secret savings account. I want to know how much is in it and I want 70% of it. And I want her to admit fault in the dissolution papers. Fault admission is tough, Margaret said. She'll resist that. Then we go to court, I said. And I released James's report to her employer showing she fraudulently obtained her position. Let's see how that works out for her remote tech job. Silence. Then Margaret laughed. You're learning. I'll convey your terms. Rachel's lawyer called back in 6 hours. She'd agreed to everything except the fault admission, offering instead to sign a non-disparagement agreement where neither of us could publicly discuss the reasons for the divorce. Counteroffer, I told Margaret. She signs the non-disparagement and pays my legal fees. All of them. Yours, James's, everything. She'll never agree, Margaret said. Try. She agreed. Apparently her secret savings account had $32,000 in it, money she'd been skimming from her paychecks for months, preparing for exactly this scenario. She'd rather pay my legal fees than have her fraud exposed. We signed the settlement agreement on February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rachel got 60% of her secret account, about $19,000. I got the house, my full retirement accounts, our joint savings, both cars, she'd been driving her parents' old sedan anyway, and all my legal fees covered. She got her personal belongings and had to be out of the house completely by March 1st. She came to pack on a Saturday morning. I wasn't there. Andrew had offered to supervise while I stayed at his place. He texted me updates. She's crying a lot, trying to pack slowly, I think hoping you'll come back. I didn't respond. 2 hours later. Found a box of Daniel's stuff in her closet. Clothes, books, a toothbrush. She had a whole separate life here. 3 hours. She's done. Wants to leave a letter for you. I told her absolutely not. She left anyway. It's on the kitchen counter. I came home after she'd gone. The letter was in a pink envelope with my name on it. I didn't open it. I threw it directly into the fireplace and watched it burn. Whatever she had to say, I didn't need to hear it. The house felt different without her things. Emptier, but also cleaner. Like I'd removed the infection I hadn't known was there. I spent the next 2 weeks repainting the bedroom, replacing the sheets, rearranging furniture, making the space mine again. The divorce was finalized on April 3rd, 92 days from discovery to dissolution. Margaret called it a record. Fastest fault settlement I've ever processed, she said. Usually takes a year minimum, but when the evidence is this clear and one party is this motivated to avoid public exposure, things move quickly. What happens to her now? I asked. That's up to her, Margaret said. I heard through the legal grapevine that she and Daniel are officially dating now, living together in his rental. Her employer found out about the reference fraud. Not from us. Someone else must have tipped them. And she's on a performance improvement plan, which usually means they're building a case to fire her. But that's not your problem anymore. You're free. Free. The word should have felt better than it did. Instead, it just felt like relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for 3 months and could finally exhale. Liam came over that night with the poker group. We played cards, drank beer, didn't talk about Rachel except when one of the guys asked if I was okay, and I said, getting there. It was true. I wasn't okay yet, but I was getting there. I was sleeping through the night again. I was eating regular meals. I was making plans beyond just surviving the next legal deadline. I'd started running in the mornings, something I hadn't done since college. Started reading again. Started thinking about what I actually wanted my life to look like now that I wasn't building it around someone else's lies. 2 weeks after the divorce finalized, I saw Rachel and Daniel at the grocery store. They were in the produce section, debating avocados, and for a second, our eyes met across the bananas. Rachel's face went pale. She grabbed Daniel's arm, and they hurried to a different aisle. I continued shopping, bought my groceries, went home, and realized I hadn't felt anything. No anger, no sadness, no betrayal. Just nothing. She was someone I used to know, someone who'd hurt me badly, but she wasn't my problem anymore. In May, Daniel's rental lease ended, and they moved to an apartment across town. I heard about it through the neighborhood group chat, someone asking if anyone wanted to buy his old furniture before the movers came. I didn't respond. In June, I got a promotion at work. My boss said I'd been showing real leadership over the past few months, and they wanted to reward it with a senior position and a 20% raise. I celebrated with Andrew and Liam, bought myself a new car, a used but reliable SUV that was fully mine. No joint title, no shared payments. In July, I went on my first date since the divorce. Her name was Natalie. I'd met her through a friend of a friend, and we had coffee that turned into dinner that turned into a second date. It didn't work out long term, but it was good practice. A reminder that not everyone lies. Not everyone builds their life on deception. Some people are just genuinely who they say they are. In August, I got a letter from Rachel's lawyer. She was petitioning to have her name removed from our marriage certificate public records, citing privacy concerns. Margaret filed an objection, arguing that public records exist for a reason, and Rachel's embarrassment wasn't grounds for erasure. The judge denied Rachel's petition. The divorce remained public record, fault admission included. In September, I ran into Rachel's mother at the pharmacy. She looked tired. She apologized for her daughter, said she'd raised her better than that, didn't know where she'd gone wrong. I told her it wasn't her fault. People make their own choices. She started crying and I felt bad, but I also knew it wasn't my job to comfort her. I'd done enough emotional labor for that family. I excused myself politely and left. In October, exactly 1 year after I'd found that wedding album in the garage, I hosted a Halloween party at my house. Invited 20 people, friends, co-workers, neighbors. The house was full of laughter and terrible costumes and people who actually cared about me. Liam dressed as a detective and kept making bad jokes about investigating the snack table. Andrew brought his kids, and they thought my house was the coolest because I'd set up a projector in the backyard for horror movies. At one point, standing in my kitchen watching people enjoy themselves in my space, I realized I was happy. Actually happy. Not pretending, not going through motions, just genuinely content with the life I was building. It had taken a year of pain and legal battles and sleepless nights and slow, hard healing. But I'd made it through. and I'd made it through as someone stronger than the person who'd opened that photo album 12 months ago. The neighbor who'd bought Daniel's rental was a retired teacher named Gloria, who baked cookies for the whole street and organized a book club. She asked me once if I knew the previous tenant, and I said we'd met briefly, but hadn't kept in touch. She nodded and said he'd seemed troubled, and she was glad to have a fresh start in the house. I agreed. Fresh starts were good. I've been asked a few times if I regret marrying Rachel, if I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, if I feel like those 3 years were wasted. The truth is complicated. Yes, I wish I'd known. Yes, I'm angry that she lied. Yes, there are moments I feel stupid for trusting her. But I also learned something invaluable about resilience, about standing up for myself, about recognizing that love without honesty isn't really love at all. Those 3 years weren't wasted. They were just expensive lessons in what I won't tolerate ever again. Daniel and Rachel broke up in December. I heard through a mutual acquaintance who thought I'd want to know. Apparently, Rachel had started lying to Daniel too, telling him she was working late when she was actually going out with friends, hiding purchases, all the same patterns. Daniel had finally seen what I'd seen. That Rachel doesn't know how to be honest. That she builds her life on layers of deception because the truth is too uncomfortable. I felt a brief moment of vindication, then moved on. Their relationship. Their problems. Not my circus anymore. I'm writing this now, in January, sitting in my living room with coffee and morning light coming through windows I've cleaned of the residue of someone else's life. If you're reading this and you found something that doesn't make sense in your relationship, trust that feeling. Don't rationalize it away. Don't let someone convince you that you're paranoid or overreacting. That nagging doubt exists for a reason. Pay attention to it. And if you discover you've been lied to, know that it's not your fault. You're not stupid for trusting someone. They're wrong for violating that trust. But you will survive it. You'll heal. You'll build something better. I did. You can too. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.